2022 is going to be a year filled with MCU goodness, both on the big screen and on the small screen. So today I want to rank every MCU project coming in 2022, from the one I'm least excited for to the one I'm most excited for. So let's do it. Now, before I properly start with my ranking today, I want to know your ranking of the MCU projects coming in 2022. All 11 are listed in the description, so check them out and drop your ranking in the comments below. Just start the conversation, because it's always the most important part. And while you're down there, if you like movies and TV, this is the place to be, so consider clicking that subscribe button so you don't miss any future conversation on your favorite movies and TV. Also, a few of these projects are not like 100% confirmed for 2022, so they might get moved around for next year. There are some projects as well that were supposed to come out last year and they were moved, so they might move again. Nevertheless, there's 11 projects to rank, so let's get started. Am Groot easily comes in last place. This was, like many of the projects you're going to see on this list, was announced back on Disney Investors Day in 2019 or 2020. I'm never sure. These years are all a blur. Simply put, I don't know what this is. It's a novelty thing. It's meant to amuse and lightly entertain for 5 minutes because it's going to be a series of shorts. And I'm just not that interested. I'm just not that interested in short format series. They're just there to put a smile on your face. I like to smile, I'll watch it. It's just not something that I'm looking forward to. Halloween Special comes in at number 10. This is supposedly going to be focused on Werewolf by Night, but again, that is not officially fully confirmed. Much like the I Am Groot series, it just doesn't sound that interesting at this moment. It was announced, I also believe, on the Disney Investors Day. And since then, we have no further information besides knowing that Gabriel Garcia Bernal has been cast as the lead character. That's all the information we have. And again, it's going to be animated, so as a Halloween special, they might present it as a Halloween special for the What If series, and it might have that same kind of animation. It might be on one of the many worlds in the multiverse. But as of right now, I'm just not that interested in the Werewolf by Night character. I'm not interested in a Halloween special. I just don't know what this project is. Again, it's a novelty act, and so I guess it'll be fine to watch, but it's just not something that I'm eager to see. The Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special comes in at number 9, and this is one that, when it was announced at the Disney Investors Day, is one that I really took a few steps back when they announced this, because like, really, that's what you're doing? But at this moment in time, looking at what James Gunn is doing with Peacemaker, and knowing what his full-on James Gunn-ness is like, I think this can really work. The sensibilities and personalities that he created, not only for the Guardians of the Galaxy characters, but for the franchise itself, I think this can really work. It is a play, obviously, on the Star Wars Holiday Special, and the kookiness, craziness, James Gunn creativity full on into this, and it's going to throw us in and connect into Volume 3, which is finally coming out next year. I think this can be very interesting. A special 1 hour off adventure that is not really any of the films, but it's a connective tissue in between. I think it can be interesting. That being said, I also think that's kind of this ceiling on it, where you cannot do too much. It cannot just be that interesting. Otherwise, it would be Volume 3, or it would be one of the films. It's just going to be a nice, simple adventure in between one or the other, but it's going to be a Christmas adventure, and I always appreciate those. Ms. Marvel comes in at number 8, and this one, I'm going to start with the things that don't leave me too excited before talking about the positives. where this is the one MCU show that has been delayed the most. It's also the one MCU show that has been delayed without us being given a proper reason. Like, whenever these movies or shows were shuffled around because of the situation of the world right now, we always heard the reasons. Maybe it was production issues. Maybe production had to be halted. We're going to talk about another project that has a ton of production issues in that regard. But this is one that we just don't know why it's going to be delayed. Another reason is just that, while I like the character of Miss Marvel fine enough, I've read her in a ton of Young Avengers comics and in Champions as well. I love her relationship with Nova, Sam Alexander, and Miles Morales in the comics, but it's just not a character I personally connect with on an intimate level or really gravitate towards. It's just not one of my personal favorite characters. That being said, the positives. I'm a bigger fan-ish of the Captain Marvel movie more than most people, so I can see them having delayed this show to come out right before the Marvels in 2023, so they strike while the iron's hot. So I can see that connection being there for people to get the hype of Miss Marvel and then immediately go into the Marvels. I think that would make sense. I also really like the little glimpses that we've seen of the show. Again, it looks different from everything else. It's a young hero coming into the MCU. We get that fanboy perspective, and culturally she just comes from an interesting culture that is not portrayed in media a lot, so I'm curious to see a superhero emerging from that. Most importantly, the creative team. These are the guys that are not only doing this, they're doing Batgirl, but these directors did Bad Boys for Life, a film I was not looking forward to whatsoever, ended up being my favorite Bad Boys film. So this one just has a ton of things that I think are questionable, but then a ton of curious, interesting possibilities when it comes to the positives. Number 7, we have Black Panther Wakanda Forever. This is one I really wish I could put higher on the list. Full disclosure, I know quite a few bits of inside information on this one. And this is one that, the things that I find out about this film, some leave me super excited. There are some good bits in this one that are not public knowledge yet. But then there are others that I'm not too keen on. The production in general just seems to be haunted for this film, where last week finally got back into production after months of stopping for one of the actors to get their shit straight. But then later on that same last week, they had to halt production again. For all we know at this point, that this time it cannot be blamed on anyone. But then we get into the trickiest part of this discussion, which is they decided to not recast T'Challa. And I've always been a defender that they should. I understand why they didn't. They were in a very delicate situation where they would be damned if they did, damned if they didn't. I just always was a defender that the best thing for this film was to recast T'Challa, who is such an important character for the MCU, but culturally, outside of the films, he's just a very meaningful character for a lot of people. So I truly believe the best thing for these films, for the MCU in general, would have been to recast the character. And they're going into this direction with the franchise that I just question. And at this point, I have not been convinced that this was the right way to go. Now, it still has all the characters from the original, which I love, and I love those characters. It still has Ryan Coogler directing, and he made a ton of the important decisions on which direction to take this franchise in. So I'm willing to trust him. I always go by the old adage of "in Feige we trust," and add Ryan Coogler to that list of people I trust as well. But it's just a ton of questionable things. So as much as I want to believe in this film, I'm really finding myself retracting from being fully excited for it, sadly. She-Hulk comes in up next, and this is one I'm honestly very surprised I have it this high on the list, because when it was announced back on the Disney Investors Day, I was not excited because I'm just not a big fan of these derivative characters. But everything they've shown since then has slowly but surely moved this one up a few spots on my most anticipated list, where it seems like a mix between Ally McBeal and the 70s Hulk. And we're going to see Bruce Banner that is back in Bruce Banner form, so we might see Hulk that is Monster Hulk in this show. And they're also breaking the fourth wall. And I find the approach to the story of this character the most interesting aspect about it. It's the most creative perspective they presented, in my view, since WandaVision, which is most people's favorite MCU Disney Plus show. Not mine, but I do love WandaVision. And I just think, again, despite not being too interested in this character herself, there's a ton of cool stuff that is going to be happening in this show. Again, inside information, so I'm not going to dive too much into it. But again, it's the approach and the way they're telling her story that interests me. It also helps that I do love Tatiana Maslany. If you have not seen Orphan Black, do watch it. I think she's amazing. She's a great choice. And the fact that they're mixing all of this Hulk mythology, both with things inside the MCU and outside, bringing in the sensibilities of the Hulk TV show, that is just interesting. That's creative. And that makes it stand out from the pack. What if Season 2 comes in next? And this is one that just feels right to have it right that center in the list. Because it's a show that's very different from all the other ones, where they're all continuous stories, and the movies as well, obviously. But this is one that every episode is going to be different. And I appreciate immensely the creativity that the writers and creators behind the show can have at the stories they present. However, much like the first season, I just know there are going to be a few stories that I'm going to be very excited for, and then there are going to be a few stories that I'm going to question why they're there. We know we're going to get the Gamora episode that was missing from season 1, but it's the creativity, it's the very creative premises that make this exciting. And much like the tagline says for the show, the possibilities are endless. So that's the thing that gets me most excited. The thing that leaves me least excited. So that's the thing that leaves me most excited. The thing that leaves me least excited is, again, that episodic nature that just creates for an overall uneven series, much like season 1 was. As much as I can appreciate the creativity that inherently comes with a premise like this, a premise like this also inherently brings that unevenness of quality from episode to episode. Secret Invasion sits just out of the top 3. This is one that when they announced on the Disney Investors Day, I questioned why they were making this a show. This is a story that drastically changed our perspective of Marvel Comics forever, back when they did it in the comics in 2005 or 2006. And I feel like it can do exactly that for the MCU going forward, which is very exciting. I also love the approach that now that they've changed the Skrulls in the MCU and they've presented them as good guys, I get excited about the possibility of now presenting other Skrulls as bad guys, because I hope it's not that simple and not all Skrulls are just the same. I hope there's good ones and bad ones. And that's when the intrigue commences, where who can you trust amongst the Skrulls? I find that fascinating. As excited as I get about that and about the excellent cast they're putting together with Emilia Clarke, Olivia Colman, Kingsley Ben-Adir, and Nick Fury, Samuel L. Jackson finally headlining his own Marvel project, I'm still to this day kind of questioning why they would do such a big story with massive repercussions on a television show, which I'm really enjoying these television shows so far, most of them at least. But this feels like an event that feels like it belongs on a big screen. So right now, until we get more information, I'm still just questioning why this one is on TV. I think it can have massive repercussions. I think maybe this is the TV show that changes that. Maybe this is their first event TV show. But right now, I still feel like it should be a movie. Thor: Love and Thunder brings us into the top 3, and if you're familiar with me, if you're familiar with the channel, you might be questioning why this one is right here. I wasn't that big a fan of Ragnarok, but I do love the first Thor. That is still the best Thor film in my book. But since Thor Ragnarok, I've become a big fan of Taika Waititi. He's not only directing this time, he's also writing the script. Plus, they're adapting, in part at least, my single favorite Thor story arc with Gore the God Butcher. Plus, he's being played by Christian Bale. If you have not read the Jason Aaron Thor run that has the story of Gore the God Butcher, get your eyes on it. Plus, it's getting into a ton of Thor mythology. Why it can't get any higher is because it's also adapting one of my least favorite Thor stories with the Jane Foster Thor. It's just not a story I ever gravitated towards. It's just not a story that I was interested in when it came out in the comics. It's not badly done, it's just not something that I want to see. Much like the She-Hulk character, where there I'm much more interested in the approach, and I'm sure I will like the character if they do a good job. In here, by principle, I just don't like this derivativeness. I like that they're bringing Jane Foster back, and I'm curious to see what they do with her and Thor's relationship and dynamic. I'm just not that interested in the Thor, Jane Thor part of it. I have some theories on how the Jane Foster Thor and the Gore the God Butcher story can intertwine and become one. Nevertheless, this looks like 80s rock and roll sci-fi, which is just my jam, plus Marvel Comics, plus Norse mythology. It was made for me. Moon Knight comes in at number 2. We just had a trailer for this that stands out so much from the pack in every conceivable way. First of all, let's talk about the character. This is one of my favorite characters in the comics, and I've been telling all of you, read the Jeff Lemire run, read the Warren Ellis run, read the Bendis run, get your eyes on anything Moon Knight, because it's spectacular. This trailer is exactly what I was expecting. A mix of a little bit of Batman meets the Punisher meets Indiana Jones all together. Moon Knight. The Egyptian iconography is all there. This very meaty, complex role that Oscar Isaac, one of my favorite actors again, is tackling in such a rich, compelling way, where this one trailer completely focuses on one of the personalities, and I feel like the next trailer will focus on the Mark Spector personality, and then bring them all together. Ethan Hawke as a cult leader, this just looks like such my jam of a show, where it looks and feels from this 2-minute trailer much more akin to the Marvel Netflix shows. This is a character that I've been dying for years to see adapted into the big screen, into my favorite franchise. So I couldn't help but be excited for this, and this trailer just completely sold me even more on it. This is actually the first MCU project we're going to get this year overall, so I could not be more excited for it as of this moment. But coming in at number 1 is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, the one project I can be more excited for than Moon Knight. Full disclosure again, this is one I know a ton of inside information on, and every piece of information I find out about this one leaves me more and more and more excited. This is going to be pure insanity. It's hopefully exactly my kind of movie, where it's this insane, gigantic, monumental, multiversal, big blockbuster, but hopefully it focuses enough on telling an intimate story of Stephen Strange amongst this insanity. I'm also a big fan of the original Doctor Strange. I'm also a big fan of Doctor Strange in the comics. I used to just stare at those kaleidoscopic, insane, psychedelic visuals. And what Sam Raimi, with his horror sensibilities on hardcore mode, is bringing into this film, judging from that trailer, I think it's so rich and interesting and unique. I also love that they're bringing Wanda into this film, and I find the dynamic that she's going to have with Stephen Strange to be one of the most interesting aspects of this film. Just everything that they're teasing in this trailer, everything that they've teased at us with the synopsis, everything just ticks the interesting box. So this is one I cannot wait to get my eyes on it. I cannot wait to see all the insanity that is going to be occurring in this film, because this film is going to be insanity. This is going to be one of those event films like Avengers, Age of Ultron, Infinity War, Endgame. This movie is going to be that big, and it's also going to be one that changes the MCU going forward, believe you me. So in that regard, everything it's bringing in, everything it's expanding on, just exciting stuff. Just exactly the main reasons why I love the MCU. So it comes in at number 1. And so that's my ranking of the MCU projects coming this year in 2022 from my favorite franchise. What did you think of my ranking? What is your ranking? Drop it all down there in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to my channel members Bruna and Stuart for making this video possible. If you want to consider becoming a channel member, there's a link in the description, so go check out the perks and see if it is for you. Thank you so much once more for watching. I'll be back next week with the DC projects from 2022 ranking by my excitement. And so until the next one, we have many videos coming this week, so I hope to see you in those. Until then, love each other and love the movies.